All right. We have quite a full agenda today. So, Jesse and I will have the honor of kicking us off. And I'm just so excited to be sharing World Ocean Day with all of you and honored that you chose to spend some of that day with us here to share our community, the ocean acidification community, with you and really talk about Sustainable Development Goal 14 and specifically Target 14.3, which is to minimize and address the impacts of ocean acidification. The speakers you'll hear from today are advancing work on ocean acidification all over the world. Many of them are working not only in their own countries, but partnering internationally to advance this. And so I'm just so excited. I'm here on behalf of the Ocean Foundation, where I run our International Ocean Acidification Initiative. And I've worked with many of the speakers today. And before we introduce our first session, I want to hand it off to my co-host for this event, Jesse Turner of the International Alliance to Combat Ocean Acidification. Jesse.
Well, thank you so much, Alexis, and for everyone joining us this afternoon for the event. As Alexis noted, my name is Jesse, and I'm with the International Alliance to Combat Ocean Acidification, which was created in 2016 by 4 subnational governments along the Pacific coast of North America, in direct response to some of the first ever observed impacts of OA on oyster hatchery production along the coast of North America. And together, the Alliance works to do 3 things. We want to elevate urgency and ambition for climate action, integrate ocean into climate commitments, and translate knowledge into policy actions, which of course is a lot of the themes around SDG 14.3. So thrilled to be with you here today. And for our first section in the agenda, I am honored to queue up a very special debut of Ocean Acidification, a poem by Samantha Jones. And the poem Ocean Acidification blends science and poetics to explore one of the challenges a high CO2 world poses to the ocean and the species, ecosystems, and human communities that depend on it. Author Samantha Jones' PhD research on carbon cycling in the Canadian Arctic inspired this work, which first appeared in Watch Your Head online in March 2021. And Samantha is currently a PhD candidate in geography at the University of Calgary in Alberta, Canada. And following the debut film, Ocean Acidification, it is my great honor to turn it over to Ambassador Thompson, UN Secretary General Special Envoy for the Ocean, who will help us frame today's event, talking about the climate-ocean nexus, the importance of sustaining leadership on SDG 14 as we go forward into this year and beyond. So without further ado, it is my great pleasure to share with you all Ocean Acidification, a poem by Samantha Jones.
The other carbon problem is more insidious, is almost invisible to the naked eye, is microscopic at its onset, poking tiny holes in the base of the food chain, is propagating, is dismantling, is threatening to undermine systems in their entirety, is manifesting around river mouths and flaring up here and there, in ocean waters at this time and that time, a seasonal state moving toward a permanence. Exacerbated by cold water, exacerbated by changes to the hydrologic cycle, exacerbated by stratification, exacerbated by indifference. Vinegar dissolving carbonate scale off of shower tiles, of faucets, of the inside of kettles without elbow grease. A little bit of acid goes a long way. A little bit of acid goes a long way. A little goes a long way. A little bit goes away. The other carbon problem is chewing away at the edges, creating an irregular halo, inhibiting, is pulling away molecule by molecule, is leaving a thinned legacy of vulnerability, or sometimes a resilience, passed down to the next, if there is a next generation. Because at some point, all of the energy gets used up just trying to build this tiny body, a capsule for this tiny body, made slight by its own home. Some of us can adapt. Some of us have the ability to modify the chemistry of the water adjacent to our beings. Some of us will become a whisper. Some of us can only whisper about the tiny gaps we will leave that will grow and grow and grow until something collapses. We tried our best to warn you. The other problem is irregular, inhibiting, leaving a legacy of vulnerability. If there is a next generation, at some point energy gets used up, trying to build this tiny body, a capsule for this tiny body, made slight by its own. Some of us adapt, some of us modify the water. Our beings become a whisper. Some of us can only whisper. We will leave, and until something collapses, we tried our best. Irregular, inhibiting, a legacy of vulnerability. If there is a next, this tiny body, a capsule, made slight. Some of us become a whisper, can only whisper. We will leave. This tiny body made slight, a whisper.
Ladies and gentlemen, greetings to everyone joining this event today. You may have heard my daily mantra, no healthy planet without a healthy ocean, to which must be added, the ocean's health is currently in decline, and the chief among the symptoms of that decline is ocean acidification. The ocean is the great regulator of climate through its water cycle, oceanic circulation, and the ocean's biological pump. It absorbs around 23% of our annual emissions of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. It has also absorbed more than 90% of the excess heat caused by anthropogenic greenhouse gases, with the top few meters of the ocean storing as much heat as the planet's entire atmosphere. It is provocative to appreciate that the constancy of these contributions and capacities have their limits. Over 80% of the ocean area experienced at least one marine heat wave in 2020, and ocean warming is now being observed at depths of 1,000 meters. Many thresholds and tipping points are becoming apparent, with concurrent negative impacts on marine biodiversity and ecosystem services. We know that due to excess CO2 emissions, the ocean is acidifying at the fastest rate in the history of the planet. It will be extremely difficult, if not impossible, for many ocean ecosystems and species to adapt to such rapid change. Coupled with ocean warming, this escalating acidification is bringing the very survival of coral reefs into question. The IPCC has reported that up to 90% of tropical coral reefs will disappear, even if global warming is constrained to 1.5 degrees Celsius, which is deeply concerning at a time when the WMO reports we are currently on a path to over 3 degrees Celsius by the end of this century. Coming from an island that is ringed by a mighty coral reef, it's incomprehensible to me that coral will no longer be there. Rather like being told if you live in the middle of a prairie that there will be no longer any grass. We must refuse that future. It is thus that I turn to movements like the Ocean Acidification Alliance to say, raise the ambition. In the name of intergenerational justice, we must demand of our governments, corporations, cities, and of ourselves the action required to secure a net zero world economy by 2050. SDG 14.3's target of minimizing ocean acidification will be a key element of the UN Ocean Conference in Lisbon next year. But if accelerating ocean acidification's chief cause is anthropogenic greenhouse gases, then the UNFCCC COP26 in Glasgow this November has to be our focus in what remains of 2021's work. I hope I'll see you there, and I thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you so much, Samantha, for the beautiful poem that you shared with us. It's been a pleasure to work and collaborate with you, the Ocean Foundation, and MIOPAR community of practice on ocean acidification in Canada to bring that poetry to you all today. And also, of course, always appreciate remarks from Ambassador Thompson, who really hits home the urgency of now. And really calling on us to raise ambition, to elevate urgency, and to really think about UN SDG 14 and the significance of climate action as intertwined. And so that really is the focus of today's event, of course. And so I am thrilled to introduce our first couple panelists who will help us get an example, I suppose, of the actions that are occurring across the world to better understand and address ocean acidification, and particularly to help implement these commitments made through UN SDG 14.3. So without further ado, I'm thrilled to introduce Dr. Carla Berghoff, who is the co-chair of the Latin American Ocean Acidification Network, to give us a little bit of an overview about the Latin American Ocean Acidification Network, as well as activities occurring in Argentina, which we'll hear about after from the ministry. So Carla, can you hear us all right?
Hi, thank you so much for the invitation on behalf of the Lauca community. And thank you so much, the Ocean Acidification, the IAEA, and the Ocean Acidification Alliance for invite us to give this talk.
All right, over to you. Can you see it all right? You can see your slides?
No, I don't see my slides yet. Okay, now I do. Thank you. So I will give this talk, but I'm in representation of all the Lauca community. So next slide, please. So Lauca community is one of the most successful experiences of collaborative work in the Latin American region in relation to the ocean acidification issue. Lauca was officially established in December 2015 as a regional coordination network for ocean acidification research in the Latin American region, with the mission to communicate and strengthen the observing capacities of the ocean acidification process, as well as improving the comprehension of the potential impacts of ocean acidification in the marine ecosystem and the services that the ocean provides in Latin America. Lauca network consists of nearly 70 members from several Latin American and Caribbean countries, including Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Cuba, Colombia, Costa Rica, Ecuador, Mexico, Panama, El Salvador, and Peru. And we have a real clear sense of belonging in our regional identity, and we have a high relevance in the decision, like in the scientific community and in decision makers linking with the ocean. Next, please. And similar to other regions of the globe, investigation of ocean acidification topic is multiplying day by day in the Latin American region. The Lauca scientific community is working on the study of carbon chemistry in highly diverse ecosystem, from both to the Pacific, Caribbean, and Atlantic sectors, and from coral reefs in the Caribbean to fjords and glaciers in the southern part of Patagonia, but also not only in the coastal conditions, but also in open ocean. And also, our community is running experiments to study the biological response of different organisms to future ocean acidification conditions. Next, please. LAUCA activities is coordinated at multiple levels according to a governance plan and an executive committee consisting in a group of scientists that represent regions or geographic areas within Latin America and not countries. During the last 6 years, LAUCA have fulfilled several achievements, including training on more than 50 young researchers, technicians, undergraduate and graduate students, promote significant outreach action through webinars, seminars, regular communication through TV channels, radio, and social networks. But also we have conducted an active articulation with national, regional, and international programs like BROA from Brazil, GOAON, IOCCP, IOC UNESCO, GOOS, and of course we articulate with foundations like the Ocean Acidification Alliance and the Ocean Foundation. And we also have joined the Latin American community in scientific symposiums like the one held in 2017 in Buenos Aires, Argentina, where more than 80 participants, including countries outside our region, presented significant numbers of scientific results. And in the past periods, LAUCA was mostly integrated by senior scientists, but we acknowledge that we need to reinforce participation of young people to feel part of the LAUCA community. That is why now we include recent graduates and postdoc as LAUCA members, especially from Central America and Caribbean countries. But we are also aware that we need to develop a new format of communications, not only with the LAUCA members, but also to train our members, especially in this COVID pandemic scenario. And this is why we have implemented a newsletter and a YouTube channel with webinar series, and we are going to implement a website soon. And in addition, we are going to conduct more specific courses, not only dealing with carbon system chemistry, but also with biology and socio-ecological aspects that it's much needed in this community. Next slide, please. LAUCA members and research group in the region have produced a large number of high standard knowledge research papers, and some of them have even influenced not only the regional community, but transfer key messages to the international community. For example, in the Pacific regions, researchers have called the attention about the importance of natural variability in the experimental design. And in the South Atlantic, Southwestern Atlantic sectors, researchers have highlighted the carbon system variability, both in coastal and in open ocean regimens, and inferred ocean acidification from anthropogenic carbon estimates. LAUCA acknowledge this important scientific background, but we also acknowledge the importance of giving the right message to decision makers, especially for those not really immersed in the ocean acidification community. And for that, we are really consistent that ocean acidification is a long-term process and requires long-term capacity for observing these changes in carbonate system chemistry, which is a clear difference from understanding carbonate chemistry natural variability in daily or seasonal cycles. So if countries, members want to assume commitments for monitoring the progress of ocean acidification, those must be long-term, at least decadal scale commitments that consider the capacity needed for the regions or the countries. And this goes far beyond of measuring pH in a particular cruise or deploying a sensor for 1 year. We need to establish that, and we push towards to transmit that message. But this message is valid also for experience. We need a new level of experiments that are realistic. They can be simpler or complex, but they need to be realistic to represent the real world and focus on clear questions and consider ocean natural variability to generate information that really can contribute to evaluate and assess ocean acidification impacts. Otherwise, we run the risk of generating results that are not maybe misinterpreted or speculative and misunderstood or extrapolated by decision makers. So we want to transmit this message, and we want to go forward to all our community and to our decision makers that this is important. So thank you so much. Next slide. For further questions, becoming LAUCA members, you can contact us to our redlauca@gmail.com email, and we will soon have a new website available for the community. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Berghoff. That was a great presentation about LAUCA, and really appreciate your time sharing with us today. And so I am now really thrilled and honored to queue up some video remarks from Minister Daniel Filmus with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Argentina. And Minister Filmus will be speaking about the role of climate and ocean leadership across Argentina efforts, and really grateful for their leadership and participation in today's event in this way. So turning it over to Minister Filmus now.
En primer lugar, quiero agradecer la iniciativa de los organizadores de convocar a la Argentina para contribuir a la discusión sobre este tema tan importante en el marco del Día Mundial de los Océanos y compartir algunas de las experiencias que estamos desarrollando en colaboración y cooperación con otros países latinoamericanos y a nivel global. Argentina está comprometida con la acción climática y las negociaciones bajo el Convenio Marco de las Naciones Unidas y su Acuerdo de París. En ese ámbito hemos presentado ya nuestra segunda contribución determinada a nivel nacional. Asimismo, durante la Cumbre de Líderes para el Clima de abril del 2021, el presidente de la Nación, Alberto Fernández, anunció que el nivel de objetivos será elevado nuevamente. La conservación y el uso sostenible de los océanos, así como de sus recursos, son esenciales para la Argentina. Nuestro país reconoce el rol fundamental que los océanos cumplen para garantizar la preservación de todos los ecosistemas. Son, sin lugar a dudas, un importante pulmón planetario. En el año 2020 hemos realizado el proyecto interministerial Pampa Azul. Se trata de una iniciativa interdisciplinaria que convoca 7 ministerios nacionales que elabora políticas de Estado de corto, mediano y largo plazo a los efectos de estudiar y actuar sobre el Atlántico Sur. Trabajamos por el aumento en el conocimiento del mar a través de proyectos de investigación científica marina, la eliminación o reducción de los factores de estrés ambientales como la sobrepesca y la contaminación, así como el fortalecimiento de la capacidad de recuperación del mar a través de la creación de áreas marinas protegidas. Estamos dedicando importantes recursos para fortalecer los programas de investigación de las distintas instituciones relacionadas con el mar, y especialmente para poder comprender las causas e implicancias de la acidificación oceánica en los ecosistemas marinos bajo jurisdicción nacional. También hemos tomado el llamado de la década de ciencias oceánicas para el desarrollo sostenible 2021-2030 como una oportunidad para movilizarnos y cooperar en torno a líneas comunes de investigación y de innovación tecnológica, así como para reforzar y diversificar su fuente de financiación con miras a revertir el declive de la salud de los océanos. Argentina, como parte de este compromiso, fue designada campeón del Plan de Acción de la Autoridad Internacional de los Fondos Marinos. Teniendo en cuenta la extensión de nuestro mar, sus costas y diversidad de hábitats, y que las diferentes regiones representan diversidad en variabilidad y tendencias de cambio en la absorción de dióxido de carbono, la acidificación oceánica y el cambio climático son temas de alto interés para la Argentina. No solo a los fines de la definición de políticas públicas a nivel nacional, sino también respecto al cumplimiento de los objetivos y compromisos asumidos. Una experiencia particularmente rica ha sido la campaña binacional Canal de Beagle. la primera campaña científica marina realizada conjuntamente entre Argentina y Chile, integrada por científicos de ambas nacionalidades y por científicos de distintas especialidades. Entre otros proyectos se realizaron mediciones de la acidificación del área gracias al sofisticado instrumental con que cuenta el buque de investigación del Instituto Nacional de Investigación y Desarrollo Pesquero, INIDEP, el buque Víctor Angelescu, para el monitoreo de dióxido de carbono. Otro ejemplo son las actividades abordadas por el INIDEP en las series de tiempo EPEA, Estación Permanente de Estudios Ambientales, integradas a las actividades de monitoreo bajo la Red de Observación Marina Argentina, que se desarrolla en el contexto de Pampa Azul y que coordina el CONICET y la sección costal en la región bonaerense, integrada a las actividades conjuntas con Uruguay en el ámbito de la Comisión Técnica Mixta del Frente Marítimo. Bajo el ámbito del Consejo Nacional de Investigaciones Científicas y Técnicas se trabaja también concretamente en el área de experimentación en organismos con escenarios de acidificación en el marco de diferentes proyectos nacionales e internacionales. Cabe mencionar, por ejemplo, la participación argentina en la red marina costera Remarco. También se estudia dentro del ámbito de Pampa Azul. Este esfuerzo integrado, efectivo y coordinado de la Argentina en todos los niveles nos permite comprender y enfrentar mejor este importante desafío para la salud del océano. También nos permite aportar a la comunidad científica internacional información importante a los fines de la implementación de la meta 14.3 de los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sustentable. Se trata de minimizar y abordar los efectos de la acidificación de los océanos, incluso mediante la mayor cooperación científica a todos los niveles, y a mantener a nuestro planeta y océanos saludables para nuestra generación y para las generaciones venideras. Este encuentro es una excelente oportunidad de manifestar nuestra voluntad de seguir interactuando a nivel internacional de forma colaborativa para el logro de las metas colectivas del desarrollo sostenible que nos hemos propuesto. Muchísimas gracias.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Minister Filmus, and really grateful for Argentina's leadership. And as you heard, iterated over and over, and you will hear, I think, throughout the week of UN World Oceans Week, we need to raise ambition and continuing to talk about national action, regional collaboration, the UN Decade of Ocean Science, UN SDG 14, and of course COP26, and everything that those will culminate in this year, as well as the decade before us. So with that, it is my great pleasure now to turn it over to Councilman Chad Beauchop with the Macaw Tribal Council. And Councilman Beauchop, it's a pleasure to have you join us today. Let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that we can see and hear you. So you should be able to, let's see, see if you get a little note asking you to turn on your screen and your microphone. Perfect. Lovely. Well, thank you, Councilman Beauchop. I am here. I'll bring up your slides, and I guess what I'll note is, as we're now moving into the rest of the program, that all speakers are going to have about 5 minutes. I'll go ahead and queue up a little prompt if I feel like we're running over. And other than those two notes, turning it over to you, Councilman, for your presentation. Take it away.
Thank you, Jesse. I don't know. Yeah, there's our slides. It is a distinct honor and a personal pleasure to be involved in this presentation. As Macaw, being a potlatch people, and potlatch is where because we don't have a written history, we commemorate significant events by conducting a potlatch. The families come together, the heads of families represent their family interests. they stand their name up. That's how we go on record. It is our spiritual beliefs that, and clear understanding of obligation, that if we don't contribute to maintaining a balance in the ocean, we're not meeting our spiritual obligation, not only to the people of the Macaw Tribe, in this case with climate change, with the entirety of the world. In order for me to proceed, it's traditional that I sing a siaka, a prayer song. And what that prayer song embodies is the intention for me to display to you folks, my heart is spiritually correct, that I can stand my Indian name up, Iduit. It's a whaling name. Strength of faith to keep the whaling canoe and the harpoon throw straight. That name is reported to be over 1,000 years old. In order for us to understand Macaw's relationship to the ocean, my dad taught me when I was a younger man that we were able to communicate with the whale telepathically if we were physically strong enough to get out into the ocean, 40 miles if we had to, and if we were spiritually aligned. And I asked my dad if we could do that then, why can't we do it now? And my dad explained to me that we don't live our cultural and spiritual life as robustly as we did back in the zenith of our whaling days. And the other part of it is that the ocean isn't healthy enough to act as the medium to convey that spiritual connectivity. Our way of life, because of climate change and ocean acidification, is at stake. We can't exercise our spiritual beliefs, same spiritual beliefs that are on par with if people have faith the size of a mustard seed, they can move a mountain. We knew we could communicate with the whale. Let's pray for that balance in the ocean. In order for the ocean to be in balance, we need spiritual guidance. We need that spiritual application. Here's my prayer. It's to display that my heart is right, but it also is intended for our recipients to understand my message is true. The rattle that I'm using draws the attention of the creator. And in my case, there's a clear connectivity to the Lord above, to Christ Jesus. I understand that connectivity clearly. Thank you. It's a thrill to be able to stand up. That song was composed by my great-grandfather. It belongs to the Boachup family. Songs belong to Indian names and dances belong to the songs. What I would like to express to you is I'm derelict in my duty if I didn't thank the honored UN delegates for hosting this, distinguished guests, the OA Alliance, the Ocean Foundation, the Ocean Acidification International Coordination Center. We honor our invitations in order that we can stand our name up, our Indian names, in order that we can speak the truth to you. The Macaw Tribe is indigenous to the Cape Flattery region on the outer coast of Washington State for thousands of years. We are considered the most southern band of the New Chanuth. Macaw has cultural and spiritual connectivity that is inextricable from the ocean. We rely on the ocean and its resources to be maintained in a healthy enough manner that allows us to thrive both culturally, economically, and spiritually. Back in our treaty negotiations, we were offered by the federal and state negotiators 300,000 acres of timbered forested properties. And they wanted us to become farmers. We turned the shovels and the hoes into halibut hooks and whaling harpoons. We explained to the federal government, you can take these 300,000 acres. The sea is our country. We are poor people without the sea. And that is in the meeting minutes. We are dependent on the preservation to our access to the ocean spaces and its resources. We have traditional use maps that show our interests from the Sakhalin Islands down south to Mexico. The treaty of 1855 is the legal vehicle that acknowledges the Macaw Tribe as a sovereign entity. It also encumbers, and that might be not a very diplomatic term, but it obligates the federal government to recognize a legal concept called trust responsibility. At Macaw, the trust resources we have recognized by the federal government are our acres of timbered property, our realty, and the ocean with its resources. So that makes us a resource trustee. We have ownership to those resources, requiring the federal government to meet us at a pretty high level if we're sophisticated enough to speak to those issues at a high level. Our fishing, as an example, supports over 50% of our local economy. And our fishing is fundamental to our food security, our cultural and spiritual well-being, and the exercise of our treaty rights. The climate and OA impacts, such as ocean acidification, harmful algae blooms, and warming ocean temperatures are causing us grave concern because we're place-based resource harvesters. We can't go out of our treaty area. So in order for the government to honor its treaty responsibilities to us, we have to work together at that highest level of synchronization. This is the same opportunity that we're able to bring to the UN, that we can lend our sovereign interests that requires the federal government to address those issues that we present to them at the highest level. We worked with the Obama administration on national ocean policy, and we did extremely well with the Obama administration. We look forward to working with the Biden administration at a higher level.
Councilman,
than our.
Councilman, just giving you a
Yes.
1 minute warning.
You know, in the difficulty in being held 5 minutes is I'm a potlatch speaker, and my speeches could go on for hours. But our work with the Washington Governor Gregoire used that as a foundation to move on to in Ocean Alliance. We're forming a close working relationship to take advantage of the technical resources, their personnel that we view can seamlessly synchronize with our sovereign, with exercise of our sovereign authority and sovereign interest. Having said that, it has been a true pleasure to represent to you folks our spiritual and our resource, our spiritual and our cultural interests, and how we hope to move together on the big stage with the United Nations. Thank you very much, Jesse.
Thank you so much, Councilman. And we always know that 5 minutes is way harder than 30 minutes and really appreciate your partnership and the Macaw Tribe's leadership. And as your slides were indicating, and as you were speaking to, the Macaw Tribe has been really at ground zero on ocean acidification research, understanding, and response since the early 2000s, and that your leadership has remained not just here on the west coast of Washington, but also now at a regional and international scale. And through the Alliance and through the Ocean Foundation, we look forward to continuing to share out the research that the Macaw Tribe has been leading, both around the trends around ocean climate change, but also the specific impacts and vulnerabilities. So thank you, Councilman, for your time today. It is so great to be in partnership with you, and we always accept the invitation to Potlatch and are grateful for it. So with that, turning it over to Alexis to walk us through our final speakers. Thank you, Alexis, over to you.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be able to introduce the next set of speakers, and I think transitioning from my home state, Washington State, to another place where tribes play a key role in ocean management, I'd like to introduce Dr. Christina Mcgraw, who is with the University of Otago and the New Zealand OA community. I am inspired by Dr. Mcgraw's work both at the national level in New Zealand, as well as the work she does internationally, and how much collaboration she fosters. So Christina, over to you. Jesse's queuing up your presentation.
Great. Thank you, Alexis. I will be speaking today in my role as chair of the New Zealand Ocean Acidification Community Council, or the NZOAC. This is a group of about 250 scientists, policymakers, iwi or tribal representatives, aquaculture operators, and the general public who have been meeting annually for about 15 years. These relationships have allowed us to provide support and knowledge to the Government of New Zealand in its development of an ocean acidification action plan, and more recently in its leadership role for the Commonwealth Blue Charter Action Group on Ocean Acidification. And I'd like to start today's talk with a product of that Blue Charter Action Group, the Policymakers Handbook for Addressing the Impacts of Ocean Acidification. Now, under the Blue Charter, Commonwealth countries have agreed to actively cooperate to tackle ocean-related challenges and to meet commitments for sustainable development with particular emphasis on SDG 14, Life Below Water. Implementation of the Commonwealth Blue Charter is through 10 action groups, and New Zealand stepped forward to champion the action group on ocean acidification. In this role, they gathered scientific experts and 23 government officials from 17 Commonwealth countries. And at this meeting, there was a lot of discussion about SDG 14.3, and this discussion really focused on the need to improve members' ability to address ocean acidification through the development of new strategies for marine monitoring, capacity development, and management. However, participants also noted that while there are a lot of ocean acidification resources available, most require implementation capacity or expertise that's not easily accessible to policymakers and not available in all Commonwealth countries. And so this handbook, which was released in April, aims to address this gap. It pulls together and contextualizes existing resources to help policymakers identify and implement ocean acidification response strategies. Now, the framework of this handbook is the Path Towards Action, which provides a step-by-step guide, including templates, to identifying the priorities that will inform the development of an OA response strategy. The handbook includes background information on mitigation and adaptation options, predicted impacts, and case studies. But it also provides much more detailed information on monitoring and forecasting, engaging stakeholders, and about 20 existing international, regional, and national frameworks relevant to ocean acidification. The handbook is available on the Commonwealth Blue Charter website, but I'll add a link in the chat box at the end of my talk. Now to shift gears. Now to shift gears from the international to the national, New Zealand is also developing its own ocean acidification action plan. When New Zealand researchers and organizers and organizations, including the NZOAC, became aware of OA Alliance in about 2017, there was immediate interest in joining as affiliate members. However, only 1 month later, the New Zealand government also joined, and so it became clear that the actual best way forward would be to develop a single New Zealand-wide action plan that could draw on the strengths of all members. And so the Ministry for the Environment and the NZOAC co-led a working group to develop a list of proposed actions. And throughout this process, the OA Alliance resources were used heavily. However, in New Zealand, we also had a lot of additional resources, including a 22-year ocean acidification time series, a growing coastal acidification monitoring network, and strong links between industry and academia. And so over the course of the year, the working group identified high priority actions, which are now with the Ministry for the Environment, who are developing a formal action plan. And I think everyone is really looking forward to the day that that action plan can join all of the others on the OA Alliance website. And so I want to wrap up today, moving back from the national scale to a slightly larger or regional scale. Just want to end with a few comments about the great work being done by SPREP, or the Secretariat of the Pacific Regional Environment Program, for those of you who aren't familiar with some of the other work going on in the area. So SPREP's ocean acidification work includes supporting mitigation and adaptation pilot studies and monitoring ocean acidification throughout the Pacific Islands. Some of this work is supported by New Zealand, which established the New Zealand Pacific Partnership on Ocean Acidification with SPREP. And this partnership was developed to build resilience to ocean acidification in the Pacific Islands region, including monitoring, and so also contributes to SDG 14.3. And so with that, I'd like to thank all of the contributors to the Policymakers Handbook and the action plan, including Commonwealth Action Group members, the Commonwealth Secretariat, and New Zealand's Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, and the Ministry for the Environment. And so with that, I'll go ahead, and I saw a comment about the handbook. I'll just add that link to the chat box now.
Thank you so much, Christina. And really, I encourage everybody to look at this handbook because it is truly an excellent resource. At this time, I have the great pleasure of introducing Dr. Abed Rahman Hassun, and I've known Abed for a number of years. He is just a tireless OA champion. He leads the OA Mediterranean Hub. He advances enormous amounts of OA research in his home country of Lebanon, but also really fosters OA research in other countries, including a partnership in West Africa. So it's my great pleasure to introduce Abed.
Thank you so much, Alexis, for the introduction. Thank you, Alexis and Jesse, actually, for the invitation. It's really an honor to be here with these remarkable invitees and to hear how ocean acidification is actually affecting not only marine organisms, but also vulnerable communities and our culture, etc. So I'm so happy to be among these international speakers to highlight about the work of ocean acidification, the work that's
Abed,
happening.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but your audio is a little scrambled. I wonder if your headset connection is poor. It was fine, okay, but at the beginning.
Is it okay now?
Yes, much better, much better.
That's amazing. So I'm actually here to highlight the work of the OA Madhab in the Mediterranean. So why we should be interested in the Mediterranean and to actually implement and to conduct SDG, to report SDG 14.3.1, specifically data. Because actually the Mediterranean Sea, the interest actually in the Mediterranean Sea did not start recently. It has took the attention of ancient civilizations who built their empires on its realms and used it in their economic roots, from Phoenicians to Pharaohs to Greeks, Romans, who called it Mare Nostrum, our sea, to many other impactful Mediterranean civilizations. So contemporarily, as Mediterranean countries have shaped their economic activities and have been also blooming and booming in terms of wideness and impact on the semi-enclosed Mediterranean Sea, where so much Mediterranean communities rely on its resources for their livelihoods, actually, as the annual revenue, the estimated annual revenue is about $3.4 billion. And the majority of the fleet composition is formed of small-scale fishing, which means that there are so much vulnerable fishermen communities and so much vulnerable communities around the Mediterranean Sea who are actually relying on its resources. But also the Mediterranean is the sea bridge between the West and the East through the Strait of Gibraltar, the channels, and between the north and the south via the Suez Channel. So it's a maritime shipping hub, which means that it has so much environmental effects. So rising CO2 emissions, pollution, marine litter, and so on. And the recent MEDEC report, which is the Mediterranean Network for Environmental and Climate Change, it has published a recent report highlighting actually the different climate-related drivers and non-climate-related drivers and their effects on ecosystems and many other fields of vital fields in the Mediterranean Sea. But it also highlighted and mentioned the effects of ocean acidification on Mediterranean marine ecosystems, which shows the necessity of better understanding this phenomenon in our unique sea. And that's how actually we can say that our mare nostrum, our sea, is affected by ocean acidification. This is why two major ocean acidification projects took place in the Mediterranean, and they are well known in the community here, EPOCA and the Med Sea. Of course, the IAEA, OAICC, is one of the important players in the Mediterranean community, scientific community, and based on their data, we can see that there are tons of published research papers, actually more than 350 research papers on OA in the Mediterranean. The majority are about actually biological effects and minority about chemical effects. But that's not sufficient, actually. So here it comes the role of the GOA on with its very interesting vision, because we needed actually to share the ocean acidification expertise, data, information, etc., and to widen OA research internationally. And one of so ocean acidification is a global condition. That's why GOA was interested actually to widen, as I said, the number of its members, but because it's also a global condition with local effects, regional hubs were encouraged to be established in order to better understand these local effects in these regions. So our ocean acidification Mediterranean hub is one of these recently established actually and founded hubs to understand the chemistry and biology, and to be a platform that unify the different scientists working on ocean acidification in the Mediterranean Sea. So we are so far 57 scientists from 10 Mediterranean countries, which for those who know about the Mediterranean politics, etc., it's something really important. So we are here to improve the communication, promote community best practices, etc., and support our, each other. So we've done so far many important things. So now we know who's doing what in the Mediterranean, because we've launched many surveys. We are identifying ways of collaboration through projects, cruises, etc., identification of central labs to produce certified reference materials that are basics for our scientific work. We are participating in well-known events, and now we are also a voluntary commitment, which is really amazing, because here we are trying to also connect between science and diplomacy. Also, we are always trying to through a project that has been funded by the IAEA on the effects of ocean acidification on seafood. Many members of the ocean acidification community in the Mediterranean are trying now to intervene and to involve the society through surveys and to check how much they know. We are always trying to also to be involved in visible and highly impactful events like this one and the high-level political forum, the Ocean Acidification Week that will happen also in 2020, and the Monaco Ocean Week that has been also a nice event that has been relating also science and policymakers in the Mediterranean. And you are welcome to also check the latest science in ASLO 2020. So in general, and finally, regional hubs are crucial to understand local ocean acidification trends and effects. Thus, continuous support is needed. And implementing this UN SDG 14.3, mainly 14.3.1, and protecting communities is crucial. And as we've heard just from the representative of the Macaw Tribe, it has really huge and significant effects on not just the Mediterranean ecosystems, but elsewhere as well. So ocean acidification actions, not only to understand ocean acidification, but also to improve ecosystems resilience against it. So it's time now to protect the most vulnerable communities and the marine and coastal resources. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Abed. You can just see from everything Abed showed us how much work he's doing within his community and more broadly. So we're so grateful to have you as part of our community. I can't think of a better way to close out this session than to hand things over to Dr. Peter Swarzenski with the International Atomic Energy Agency, which hosts the Ocean Acidification International Coordination Center. And IAEA, as you've heard referenced by many of our speakers today, has played such a key role in advancing international collaboration on ocean acidification. And really is just, Peter is a champion beyond champions for ocean acidification at the UN level, at the international level. So I'm very thrilled to hand it over to Peter to provide the closing remarks for today.
Great. Thank you very much, Alexis, for that really nice introduction. And thanks to both you and Jesse for putting together this powerful and moving session on ocean acidification for the World's Ocean Day. I think you guys did a really fantastic job. So what I'm going to do now in my remaining few minutes is give you a quick update or summary progress report on the communities of ocean action on ocean acidification. In my short talk, I'm going to briefly update you on this progress report and along with Bronte Tilbrook from CSIRO, Kirsten Irsense and Katarina Schuh from IOC UNESCO, and colleagues from IEA in Monaco. We've prepared just a couple of slides based on a Community of Ocean Actions webinar that was held in the end of March, moderated by Ambassador Peter Thomson. Alexis, I will ask you to forward slides, please. Excellent. So to set the stage, I have just a couple of slides that I've prepared. And first of all, what I would like to do, we have a very long list of incredibly dedicated and talented advocates for climate change and ocean change. And starting with our own UN Secretary General, that just earlier today gave a passionate speech on the importance of oceans for both the cultural life and the economic survival of communities all around the world. Next. The US has firmly rejoined the climate arena with the appointment of Special Presidential Envoy John Kerry for the US. Next. And last, but certainly not least, our own Peter Thomson, who eloquently always speaks about the importance of the oceans. And in our session earlier today, he always is able to bring out the positive in all of his presentations. And in a recent letter to the UNFCCC for COP26 and the UN Ocean Climate Nexus, he was able to underscore how connected and the connectivity of us and how important this is, obviously for the ocean that connects us all, but also now recently in how COVID-19 has connected us. Next. So Peter Thomson presented a little bit of what I'm going to present here, but I wanted to just quickly highlight a roadmap of the community ocean actions leading towards Lisbon 2022. Next. So in 2017, we had our first UN Oceans Conference in New York City. And from that, we had more than 1,400 voluntary commitments for SDG 14. And in the 5 years since then, we've had a lot of success stories, but we've also had COVID-19. And just to highlight some of the important events that are happening in 2021, we have the Biodiversity COP in Conning, China in October. We have the UN Food Systems Summit in New York, UNEA 5 in Nairobi. Next, and the UN Decade for Ocean Science that now has set sail. And I'm very proud to announce that Go On Ocean Acidification team put together a proposal for consideration as a new program under the Ocean Decade. And that was just today announced as a successful new program. So I'm very happy to report that. Peter Thomson also mentioned COP26. A lot of preparations are going into COP26 to make sure that the ocean is properly reflected in all of the discussions. I wanted to highlight that today, Carol Turley from PML sent me a paper that she co-authored, and very nice, very poignant kind of call to arms on the importance of the ocean in climate negotiations. Next slide, please. So here's our one slide kind of overview of the geographic distribution of these voluntary commitments. And as of today, we have 277 of these commitments out of 1,642 that address ocean acidification, so 14.3. Roughly half of them are global in nature. And as you look at the different ocean basins, you can see some similarities and some dissimilarities. For example, both the Southern Ocean and the Arctic Ocean are somewhat underrepresented, even though we know that both of those ocean basins are particularly vulnerable to the effects of ocean acidification. Next slide, please. So I have just a couple of slides now on progress on the deliverables. The OA Alliance and the Ocean Conservancy continue to develop their action toolkits and engage new members. Go On has added an Arctic hub to its network. IOC UNESCO has helped UN member states be able to report on 14.3.1. And this membership has increased from 8 to 30 in 2020. And the Ocean Foundation is conducting trainings both in West Africa and the Western Pacific. And as Abed just had mentioned, the work of the OAICC with all of its partners has had an impressive reach. More than 700 and almost 750 scientists from more than 100 member states have been engaged in capacity building opportunities involving ocean acidification. Next slide, please. So what have we learned so far? And we just wanted to provide one quick snapshot on this. Measures to address and minimize the impacts of ocean acidification require the successful implementation of action plans. For example, OA Alliance has promoted more than 50 new OA action plans for both local and national governments. And many of the voluntary commitments that I just highlighted in this geographic distribution include inherent capacity building opportunities, such as trainings, technology transfer, education, re-education, and awareness raising. So with this quick snapshot of the voluntary commitments on the communities of ocean action on ocean acidification, I wanted to thank you for your time. And I have up here a website in case you are interested in making any new voluntary commitments, which we are happy to shepherd towards Lisbon 2022. Thank you very much.
That is such a wonderful forward-looking close, because the beauty of the UN Ocean Conference framework is that it's always in motion and always building. And so really, encouraging any of you on our event today to, if you have an action that you're taking related to ocean acidification, registering it as a voluntary commitment, getting engaged with these international dialogues and fora. If you have any questions about how to do that, myself and Jesse are at the ready to help you, as well as, of course, my colleagues that have joined us today from around the world. I want to invite Jessie to turn on her video to wish you all a wonderful World Ocean Day. And again, thank you so much for joining us today. Jessie, do you have any final send-off words?
Oh, just a big thank you to you, Alexis, and all your leadership through the Ocean Foundation and your colleagues work is amazing. And to all our presenters today, great set of presentations and perspectives. None of this is possible without you choosing to respond to our emails, answer our calls, and want to participate. So thank you. And finally, I would say for the poem that we opened with, Ocean Acidification, we will be making final changes and tweaks based upon this debut and the feedback, and we look forward to releasing it in a public shareable link later on this time so that you all can review it again and share it with your colleagues in the network. So with that, thank you and happy UN World Ocean Day 2021. Here we go.
Thank you.